Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 81. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. Last week, we discussed forgiveness, grace, and redemption, and my recent connection with my son, Hayden. If you have not listened to episode 80, stop, go ahead, and go back to listen to that one before we dive deeper into this episode, as these will be connected. So, God has designed your brain with the ability to change. Transformation isn't just possible, it's built into your biology. When you meditate on God's truth, you're not just filling your mind with nice ideas, you're legitimately rewiring your brain. Philippians 4:8 tells us to think about what is true, noble, and praiseworthy. Now we know why. Your brain takes shape around what you focus on. And, there's been a lot of things recently with science and, just the neural pathways and, how our brain works and what things are going on. And in the SEAL teams, I experienced a lot of that in training of teaching yourself how to think, not what to think. And that's what good leaders do. Good leaders teach their people how to think, not what to think. And it gives people the ability to innovate and adapt and facilitate and expedite their own growth depending on the intensity of their training, the intentionality of the training that you're doing, and honestly, the desire to change. You have to have the desire to change. You cannot change people unless they are willing and wanting to change. Now, we can impose discipline upon people. We can impose hard times and suffering upon people in hopes that they will change their ways. But ultimately, it's got to be a choice that you make if you want to change who you are and how you act and just the things that you do in your life. And I was having a recent conversation with a friend about this, about, one of their exes just not being the person that they used to be anymore and trying to figure out how to help this person. And ultimately I had to tell them, like, hey, this at some point you have to understand that it has to be on them. You can do all these things to help support them, to pray for them, to offer suggestions and help, but if they're not willing to do the work themselves, then they're never going to truly change. But the beautiful thing about the way God designed us is when we want to change, when we desire to change, we have the ability. And last week's episode, I feel, was a good example of that because, like I said, I had made a lot of mistakes. I had done some things that had created a situation that, unfortunately I had to work through and deal with the consequences of, and get myself in a good spot and get healed. And I'm thankful for God's grace. I'm thankful for his forgiveness. I'm thankful for my son's mom's forgiveness. Thankful for the grace, that God gives me, that she's given me, that my son has given me, that my wife has given me. And as we've been able to work through this now, my wife always knew about my son. That wasn't a surprise. It wasn't like oh, hey, honey, we need to sit down and talk. By the way, she knew from day one, legitimately. Well, I guess technically day two, because day one when we met, we didn't talk about it that night. But when we met for coffee the next day to sit down and talk and just get to know each other, I told her because it was the right thing to do. And he was my son, and I wanted him to be in my life. And I was just dealing with a lot of stuff and didn't understand all the damage that I had created. But that's the cool thing about us as humans is we can grow. We can become better versions of who we are if we want to put in the work. Now, it takes work and it takes time, and it may not be as fast as we normally want it to be. Typically, it's never as fast as we want it to be because we're impatient humans and we want things to go faster. But if we stay the course, if we stay true to our growth and our development, and we put in the work, and we're doing honest self-assessments and evaluations and seeing if we're trending in the right direction, then things can change. And, this last weekend was an incredible testimony to, real drastic changes happening and lives being transformed. And, it's crazy. Hayden texted me last night. He said, "Hey, Dad, I have a question." And we were at church, and we were just leaving church. I was able to make it in time, and I drove up from Baton Rouge, and I was talking to you yesterday about that, Lucas, and I was able to drop off the rental car, take an Uber to church, and get there in time to hear the message, which Pastor Drew's message was incredible. I think, bro, we started the super series to like all the kids are like encouraged to invite their friends and everything else like that. And I mean, there was over 800 high schoolers there.
No way.
Yeah, I think total between high school and junior high, because we all had them in the main sanctuary, was around 14 or 1,500 people maybe.
Good grief.
It was crazy. We had over, if not over 200, over 100 guaranteed, if not over 200 salvations last night.
Good grief.
It was just, bro, I was in tears watching all these kids go. I was just like, and you know, they asked for the prayer team to head down to the front. I went down the front and had a few boys come up to me that were needing prayer. I just meant every time I just started crying when I was praying for these young men, and it was just such an emotional thing. And so I get out of church and I see a text from Hayden. "Hey, Dad, I have a question." I'm like, "Hey, bud, what's going on?" And it was, I mean, just a text that you would like before the last few weeks, you know, something that I would never like, I'd always dreamed about and thought about and wondered, but never expected. There's going to be baptisms at my church in about a month. If possible, would you want to baptize me?
Bro.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like, yeah. Pretty incredible.
Yeah,
so,
man.
We're working through the date. But yeah. Anyways, what you got, bud?
Dude, wow. I got a lot of questions about this, and I kind of, you know, we talked about how this episode was sort of going to be me interviewing you about this experience based off of the stuff we heard in episode 80 and just everything you guys have been working through over the past, I guess you reconnected in late January.
Yep.
Yeah. And so this has been a month-long thing that we obviously been talking a lot about, not on the podcast, but just in general. Like most of our conversations, I think over the last couple of months have been very centric around like this, which has been this huge milestone experience for you and your family. So I want to start with like, how exciting is it for you to be able to openly talk about this part of your life now? Not that you've ever like kept Hayden a secret or anything from the people that you were close to, but it also wasn't something that you were, you know, shouting from the rooftops because you wanted to be respectful of the decision that that his mom and that their family made, and you wanted him to be able to grow up in the way that they wanted without, you know, there being a bunch of like pressure on them or unnecessary nonsense like headed their way.
Yeah, exactly. And the unnecessary nonsense was the big thing. Yeah. Because I know some people are going to be like, "Oh, I'm going to track down a son. I'm going to reach out." And it's just like, "Whoa, hold on." Yeah. Like, hey.
You're
not the parent.
Yeah,
like,
right.
You know, and
they, you know, and you said before, she made the decision that she made for good reasons whenever it was made, because you were certainly not the man that you are today.
Yeah, and it wasn't like I was this horrible, violent person. I want to be very clear. Like, it's not like I was not violent towards her, abusive towards her, or anything like that. I was just not in a good place. And, you know, and she made the decisions that she made. And, you know, I'm not saying that they're right. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
Here's the point. Like, to all these things, it doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so to answer your question, it feels great to be able to talk, you know, and, you know, after we worked through it with the kids, and, you know, there's a little bit of like,
so I've got questions about that
too.
And,
but, you know, it feels really good because I wasn't ever trying to hide it. I just didn't know how to address it properly because I didn't know. And, you know, her and I hadn't talked in like 15 years.
Right.
And so it was just one of those things where I just had to really trust God. Like, hey, when the time is right, like I know that this is going to happen.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's one of those things I was talking with a guy recently about in regards to one of the things that I've been praying about for a while now, is that God would helped me see what I needed to do to increase my capabilities to be able to handle more from him. Yeah. Because I truly feel like you're going to get in life what you're capable of handling properly. And so I really want to be able to be just a more capable husband, father, member of Echelon Front, business partner, friend. I really want to increase those capabilities to deliver impact. Ultimately, I'm just wanted to be able to deliver impact at a higher level. And I think, things in your life will adjust according to that, according to your capabilities. And so been a lot of honest self-assessments recently, and I was talking with Pastor Chris. I think we mentioned in the last episode, like, as you're praying and saying, Lord, expose my wicked ways. Hey, when you start praying those things and then you start have these things exposed, like,
that's going to happen.
Be ready.
Yep.
It's not that you're getting attacked or spiritual attacks are going on. It's just, hey, God's exposing these things that you asked him to expose, and now you get to work through these things. You need to handle these things and get rid of those things. And so there's been a lot of that as well, because I know, like, hey, I need to get rid of these things, these wicked ways, so that I can be just a better human.
Yeah.
And I don't understand God's timing in this. I don't need to, nor will I ever until I'm up in heaven. And if that's something I want to figure out, then might get that get that data download.
Yep.
But I do know that I am definitely a different person from 5 years ago and 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't think I would have handled that message properly. I took a little bit of time to respond because I was trying to process it, and I was just trying to really, like, wrap my mind around everything. And I didn't want to ruin that opportunity to rebuild a relationship with her and him. And so a lot's shifted in a good way, but again, circling back to your original question, it's cool. It's cool to be able to talk about.
Yeah. One of the things too is I kind of dive deeper into sort of motivation behind this. Like, particularly when you have, I would say especially when children are involved, right? Like it happens some with friend groups and that kind of stuff whenever there's a split or a divorce or that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But particularly when kids are involved, there's such a premium that needs to be put on the way that we talk about those, or the way that we talk about the parents, right? Like, even if you're in a group of friends where, like, hey, you know what, the parents split up, like if you're hanging out with the dad of a divorced couple and the kids are around, you've got to be really cognizant not to say negative things about the mom, because the kids will pick up on those things, and it will cause the negative things that the children hear will be things that color their view of both parents, negatively or positively.
Yeah.
How much of your, I would say as a public figure, right? I mean, you're not an A-list celebrity. You and Taylor Swift aren't bringing in the same numbers of people to to your keynotes.
Yeah.
But you are a public figure. There's a lot of people that know about you from being on Jocko's podcast, from the mentions that you've had in, not just from Jocko and Leif, but also from Andy Frisella and from a lot of other people that folks listen to. You're known that, like, how much of your, I guess, reluctance to talk about this or responsibility in not talking about it publicly was to make sure that Hayden's opinion or thoughts about the situation was not colored by how you may have been feeling about it at any point in a given time.
Very important.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a big thing. And then also, like, I mean, when you meet him and, like, you get to know him, you'll see, like, she did a phenomenal job raising him.
Yeah.
Her and her parents. Phenomenal. He is a good kid. He's a good student, trains jiu-jitsu, loves the Lord, has a huge heart, sees the best in everybody, is a people pleaser, like, wants to take care of his friends, wants to accommodate everybody. I mean, it's just like, It's incredible.
Yeah.
Him and Aiden are so similar. It's like, I mean, it's unreal.
That's cool, man.
And, it's the same way our daughters are, just very loving and caring and thoughtful. He's a very good, loving, caring, thoughtful kid, which is rad. And so, yeah, I mean, there was times I had frustration, but, like what good would it have done for me to put on, put things out there?
Yeah.
Like nothing. It would have been there. Nothing would have been accomplished.
Yeah. There's no net positive. And I have to say that from when we started talking about this situation and I started praying about it, which has been probably a year and a half ago or so, the first time that you and I had a discussion about Hayden, and knowing the little bit about the situation that I did, but seeing the way in which you handled it, man, it's such a model for now whenever I talk to single parents. Particularly, we've got some single dads who are in our church, and just giving them kind of that wisdom, having been around you from it. It's like, hey, you know what? Regardless of the situation, you've got to be really cognizant of how you're talking about your kids' moms and those kinds of things, positively or negatively, no matter how good or bad a person or a job that they've done. And in this situation, what an answer to prayer that Hayden, had such a solid foundation and is such an absolute stud, man. It's been really cool, and I've admired the way that you handled it. So before we get into some more of the stuff surrounding you guys actually meeting and getting to hang out over the past few months, I want to know this: how much did the extreme ownership mindset help you during the period of time when you weren't able to be a part of Hayden's life?
It was crucial.
Yeah, like I don't want this to sound like a sales pitchy question, right? But there's so much of this that like permeates this, and I want to draw attention to that. Yeah,
100% was just absolutely critical to me handling it the right way, us being able to communicate through this properly, and it's been good. I mean, if I wouldn't have had that as a baseline and a foundation and like who I am and how I operate, like, man, that would have been bad.
Yeah. And I think that's another important thing to highlight, is that there is, when people think about extreme ownership, they think about it in terms of like leadership principles within corporate structure, and maybe that there's a little bit of it that permeates the home, but it moves into like these areas of our lives that are massive, that have to do with, huge chunks of how we view ourselves, how we view the world, and things like that, where maybe people are in a similar situation, or they're in a situation where maybe they're, where you and Amanda were, where you're, fighting to get your marriage back, and realizing like, hey, you know what? This is what's going on. These are the things I can take responsibility for, and living without that resentment, and instead in the, that other space is so crucial to being able to do that. Do you think that made it easier for you to re-engage in a healthy way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Without a question.
Yeah. Right on, man.
Yeah. I mean, these are the consequences to my actions. Like, there's no other way around it. And so it made it very easy to navigate in a healthy manner because it was on me.
Yeah.
And it's when you understand your responsibility in something going wrong, and you understand your role, and you understand how you need to hold yourself accountable, it makes it very easy to navigate and work through things, because it's like, cool, now it's on me. Here's the things I need to do to fix and change these things. And, you're not reliant upon anybody else. Like, I wasn't waiting for anybody else to do something. It was on me.
Yeah.
And when the situation, developed to where we got reconnected, it wasn't on anybody else to handle the conversation the right way. It was on me. It was on me to be polite and respectful, and for me to focus on building a relationship and being there in my son's life. Like, that's all that mattered. And as long as I was able to maintain alignment with my wife, then nothing else mattered.
So when when you get the first text message from Hayden's mom, where she essentially, it may be better for you to phrase it, but she reaches out for the first time. Where are you? What's going on? What's going through your head when that happens?
I'm sitting at the kitchen table. The girls are sitting at the table with me. They're doing their schoolwork. It's the middle of the day. I took a break. I was in between some Zoom calls, and Amanda was standing in the kitchen, and I read the text message, read it again, and just tears started rolling down my face. And my daughters asked me, they're like, are you okay? And I said, yes. And they're like, well, why are you crying? What's wrong? And I said, it was a message from an old friend. And Amanda kind of looked over at me. And I said, an old friend I haven't seen or talked to in 15 years.
Did she know like immediately who it
yeah.
was?
Yeah. She said her name. Like she mouthed her name. Mm-hmm. And I nodded my head, and Amanda goes, okay. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Like we're going to work through this.
Yeah.
And the girl was like I think they got up and gave me a hug. I can't remember, like, because it kind of went like,
yeah.
I just sat there and I just read it, I think like 5 or 6, 7 times in a row. I just like read through it, and I was just like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what, I mean, I know what I want to say.
Right.
But I don't know how to say it properly. And
yeah.
so I just drafted up a few different responses, and sent a response asking if we could jump on a call later that night.
Yeah, just kind of connect.
Yeah.
I remember when I got the text message about it, I was sitting with Kirsten, and I was like, hey, we've got something we need to pray about right now. And she's like, what's up? And kind of gave her the quick download, and she was like, yeah. And we kind of like dropped everything and did that because we knew this was going to be a pivotal moment for the future of your family.
Yeah.
But I mean, very rarely do these kinds of things happen. Mm-hmm. Less frequently when they do happen are they, we talked a little bit about the scenario that could have played out last week of like, hey, listen, you have a problem child that I need you to come fix. Like, we've had it or whatever. Instead, it's sort of this exact opposite. Here's a healthy, good, well-adjusted young man that like wants his dad to be part of his life again. What's that look like? Yeah. And that's such a tremendous blessing to be able to have that. So you have the initial conversation, then you get the opportunity to FaceTime with Hayden, which we talked a little bit about. Yeah. And I know all of us on the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu text message, we're kind of like waiting with bated breath. We're like trying not to freak out. We're all just like, it felt a lot like junior high again. We were all just kind of texting each other like, have you heard anything? No. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah, whatever. So we're in that mode where we're just all, we're all praying. We're all really excited for you. And when we get those first few messages and, a couple of just kind of screenshots, it was so exciting to like the amount of joy as your friends that we felt was unbelievable. It was so cool for us to get to see that. So then that happens. You guys are starting to figure out what it's going to look like when you meet in person. Yeah. But then at home, you've got a very different dynamic because, this is something that now you've got to talk to Aiden and the girls about, how much of those conversations do you want to talk about, or can you walk us through? Because I know there's so much that happened in that's also very, very personal, very private, and it needs to be kept that way, right?
Yeah, for sure. Aiden, like we're like, all right, kids, we let the girls have their birthday party that weekend and have their birthday, and then. Yeah,
so that will give y'all a clue as to when all of this was going on, because this was before the girls did their most recent episode with us. Yeah. Is when all this stuff started, yeah.
Yeah, and so, anyways, we sit them down and we're like, all right, we're talking. Aiden walks in, he's like, it's about Hayden. I'm like, what? He goes, oh, I know. And Amanda and I were like, how did you know? He goes, I've always known. He goes, I remember you guys talking about him when I was like 4 or 5.
Wow.
So he remembers the conversations.
Yeah.
And just held on to him, never said anything. So the
kid's a freaking elephant. Like, he doesn't forget anything. It's crazy.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
Amanda, of course, Man and I are both like, okay.
Yeah, he's got like a file cabinet of like, here's secret things I've heard my parents talk about. It's like slowly going to reveal them to you over time.
But then also he was just like, this is cool.
Yeah.
Girls,
he's like, sweet, I hope he likes to roll.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you like Jiu-Jitsu and Jesus, cool.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah.
Great. Boys are so simple, man. It's so nice.
They really are. Girls were a little upset because they felt like they had been lied to and betrayed for a very long time.
Yeah.
And understandable, and that's what I told the girls. I'm like, hey, your feelings and emotions are valid.
Yeah.
It's okay for you to feel that way, but you can't let your feelings and emotions dictate how you react and how you respond to things in life. And, it's one of the things Pastor Chris and I were talking about, like leading up to this. So it's very, very unique timing of all of my conversations with him, right?
Yeah, for sure.
No coincidences there. But it took the girls a little bit of time to understand and process, and it was good. They're very loving, sweet kids, and Cora was really mad at me for a while. Nola was just kind of numb to it, and Amanda was trying to help me navigate that with them, with some conversations. Whereas Amanda and I talking with them, and then Amanda talking with them, like, hey, you need to understand your dad's perspective. Like, how do you think your dad has felt? And just working through all those things. But I mean, it's awesome now. It was just like we were showing. We were showing the kids pictures and videos from this weekend, and Cora wanted to see some of them again. And it was this video of Hayden and his friends like play fighting, and they're just like kicking each other, just
is this when they're like brutalizing each other's shins,
shin kicks, and just like leg kicks, and just destroying each other. And one of them, like, he gets kicked hard, it like hits the ground, and Cora goes, which one of his friends was that just did that? who knocked my brother down? And she was like protective
defensive
mode, and I was like,
yeah.
And man, and I just like look at each other. So it's been cool to see the shift, and they're all very excited to meet each other, and Hayden's super excited to meet the girls and Aiden, and Aiden's been so cool about this. Like, I was headed out there on that trip that he got to come be a part of the FTX, and he's like, are you going to get to see Hayden? I said, yeah. And he just had this big smile on his face. He's like, cool. That's awesome. He's like, I remember he asked, he's like, do you think his mom is going to be good with him coming and spending the whole summer with us? And I'm like, well, let's just take small steps.
The whole summer.
Yeah. I mean, Aiden's just
Aiden's
like,
in.
Yeah. I'm like,
full send.
I was like, well, we'll just see. We'll see what we can do. Maybe a few days, or maybe a week would be a good start. I mean, I tell him I'm down for whatever, anything and everything. And and then every time, like, I've gotten the chance to see him, the kids have been super happy for us, and us going out there for the birthday. They're all bummed that we weren't taking them with us, and they wanted to go, and so it's cool. It's been a good transition with the kids for sure.
There is something to it, when we were recording the second annual episode with the Dinnell twins, right? You're getting stuff ready, I'm getting stuff ready, and then I get to have like these little chats with the girls as we're prepping stuff, where we talk about all of the brain rot jargon that they're not going to use on the show, and topics that we want to avoid that they've seen on Instagram, and all of those kinds of things that just, for us, just absolutely make us crack up. On the other side, we do get opportunities to have these little heart-to-hearts, and so they had been moving past the acceptance into the excitement phase of getting the news. And so we talked a little bit about it. And one of the things that we talked about was like our personal toolboxes, right? That we each have tools that we've been given or tools that we learn in order to handle different situations in life. It's easy to look at our toolbox in jiu-jitsu and know like, hey, all right, these are the handful of escapes that I have whenever somebody's, got me in side control or mount or whatever. And we learn those things over time. And they help us to recognize situations. They help us not to panic and to handle those things properly. And so as we were kind of talking about that stuff, we shifted in this conversation where we were talking about, how they were dealing with the news and that they'd moved into like the excitement phase, and just talked a little bit about whether or not, if they would have known about this, 5 years ago when they're in single digits, right? Would they have had the tools to process it properly? And it was cool getting to talk to them and for them to recognize like, no, I wouldn't have known what to do. Yeah. And that the more they've had time to ruminate on it and to get more excited about this new relationship that they have the opportunity to build, the more they recognize that like this was less of a betrayal than maybe they thought it was at the beginning, which is how like most people, kids in particular, take that kind of news. Then more realizing like, oh, you know what, mom and dad were waiting until we had the maturity and the tools to be able to properly process this, because there was so much unknown about what could happen. And God just opened the door for best case scenario all the way around, which is pretty rad.
Yeah, he did.
Yep. So, all right. So now the kids know, you get the opportunity to go out to California. Yeah. You're gonna get to see your son for the first time in 15 years since he's an infant. Yeah. Right. So the last time you saw him, he could do very little other than cry and poop.
Oh, yeah.
And now you got the opportunity to be able to do jiu-jitsu with him, to roll with him. First off, did you ever think that the reunion, like as you're on the plane out there, was it going through your mind that this was maybe something that you thought in your lifetime was never going to be possible?
Yeah, there's times.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also time. Well, let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
I knew that a reunion was possible and would happen. I just didn't ever imagine it going like this.
Yeah.
I thought, unfortunately, it was going to be okay, he's 18. I can reach out now, blah, blah, blah. He probably hates me. Like I thought it was just going to be like, this horrible situation. And it wasn't. And so I just was super excited and thrilled.
Yeah. So getting ready to go out there, what are the emotions that you're feeling? You mentioned in the last episode that you're
a little nervous.
Yeah.
Because
right?
I was like,
nerves.
is this real?
Yeah.
Is this a setup?
Uh-huh.
Is this not going to happen?
Yep.
And those are all lies from the devil.
Right. All that doubt creeping in.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That fear, spirit of fear, I had to rebuke multiple times. Like legitimately just like praying that, like, spirit of fear, I rebuke you in the name of Jesus Christ. You have no authority over my life, no authority over my thoughts, my heart, my soul. Like, you're done.
Yeah. Not
like, you have to leave now. And it's crazy. Like, praying that just makes you feel better.
Yeah. It alleviates a lot of that stuff.
Well, yeah, because it has to leave.
Right.
And, which I know I was talking about this, they're going to get some questions, which I'm fired up for.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, like what does that look like?
I just prayed with some kid about this last night at church.
Yeah.
Same thing. And then but those were, creeping in. And then I think because of my past of what I did and who I am and how I'm wired, like, I'm not like a negative person, like a dooms, like,
right. You're not a worst case scenario guy.
Blah, blah, blah. Like, everything sucks. I'm not like that, but I think about the worst case things so that if it happens, I'm not shocked. Does that make sense?
You mean you have contingencies? You think about things in order that you can plan contingencies?
Yeah, but that's sometimes to a level that's maybe deeper than needed. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, if it was to be this extreme, no factor.
Yeah.
And I know this was a dynamic situation.
Sure.
Or maybe dynamic's not the right word.
I mean, it's appropriate for sure.
Okay. And so I went to the side of the spectrum that I probably normally wouldn't. Mm-hmm. And but then I recognized, like, these are all lies and attacks from the devil.
Yeah.
Like, I've FaceTimed with him multiple times. Like, he's excited. We've been text messaging. I FaceTime with his mom a few times, and we've had great conversations. And she's been very respectful of Amanda and our marriage, and just us being aligned on everything. Every single time was like, hey, well, make sure you get with Amanda, and you guys are on the same page with this. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, every single time she's been extremely respectful of our marriage and honoring of our marriage and our relationship, and making sure Amanda and I are on the same page with everything. And, trying to also develop a friendship with Amanda as well.
Right.
Which has got to be awkward for both of them. I get it. Mm-hmm. But it's also not, which is kind of cool because, I mean, Amanda, she's just a sweet
She's super
human.
friendly. Yeah.
Yeah. And she's a great human.
And really good at cooking.
Someone recently at FTX goes, I don't know how you've ever lost weight considering your wife's cooking.
Yeah.
It was Heather. She goes, you losing weight's a lie. There's no way you've ever been able to lose weight with your wife's cooking.
That's what the travel's for. Yeah.
Yeah. But I know it's got to be like unique for them. Maybe awkward's not the right word, but unique for both of them. But I also know, like, they're both genuinely good people trying to make this, be or do this the right way for Hayden, and the situation that we're in. And, and I've talked about this before, like, Amanda, she's a very unique woman when it comes to, like, her ability to put others above herself.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, even when we were divorced, she never used the kids against me.
Yeah.
When her and Aiden's dad were going through their stuff, never used Aiden against him, and never badmouthed his dad to me or about anything else. Now, there's frustrations that we would talk through, but she's never just sat and talked crap about the guy.
Right.
Never.
I don't know that I've heard her say a negative word about anyone. And we've been over having conversations, the four of us, you, me, Kirsten, and Amanda, about situations where there are interpersonal conflicts, and Amanda's very diplomatic in the way that she talks, but very, very sincere. Yeah. And they've got stuff going on, and there's more important things than just the stuff that's going on here, and we just need to make sure that we're keeping that at the forefront too. And I'm like, shut up. This person's a jerk. Let's just all talk about what a jerk they are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
No, let's go back to this.
Let's all sit in the moment where we all believe that they're a jerk, and then we'll talk about all the good stuff that Amanda has to say.
Yeah.
And
it's
go
funny.
from there. It's really convicting, man. It's tough sometimes to look at that and to know, like, all right, we're in this rough spot, for whatever it is, and knowing that, like, Amanda's going to encourage me to do the right thing, even as a pastor. Like, I'm going to go to the house, and she's going to be the one that, like, comes in with the grace and forgiveness. I'm like, we're not going to see Amanda and JP.
I'm not in that mood today.
Yeah, I'm not ready to be graceful and forgiving with these people yet. So, yeah.
So I will say it's been very encouraging to have, Amanda's attitude that way this whole time.
Yeah.
Because, even though Justine's doing the right thing and trying to be, not trying, but being very polite and respectful and everything, Amanda could choose to be, like, ruthless if she wanted to.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And could you imagine trying to navigate that?
So
that would be a nightmare. Legitimately, that would be a nightmare.
Yeah. This is something that I, unfortunately, that I see quite a bit in the opportunities I have to counsel. And it's one of the things that creates a lot of strife. And I got to tell you that, from this side of the table, when you're talking about, we're re-engaging and all this, like, these are the things that we are praying for. So Kirsten, her degree is in psychology, particularly, she's got a concentration in pediatrics. And so, like, dealing with kids. And as we were talking through this, these are the kind of things that we're talking through. She comes from a blended family, and that there were times, especially that we've seen, not just in our extended families, but also in, like I said, in the folks that I counsel, where are like, all right, so mom and dad get divorced, kids have a strained relationship with dad, but that relationship starts to improve. And so now, as the relationship with dad and the kids start to improve, that now, the biological mom is now more involved, and the stepmom wants nothing to do with her, doesn't want her over at the house, doesn't want her involved in these kinds of things. And then the conflict no longer is between the dad and the kid, but it's between the stepmom and the mom. And more often than not, that tends to blow up whatever relationship that the father can have with his kids because of the conflict that is caused there. And whether it was an infidelity issue is really immaterial. That more often than not, what I've seen is that the mom and the stepmom, when there was infidelity, that in those situations, that there's just a level of acceptance of like, hey, this is just going to be what it is. We're going to do the right thing for the kids because they're involved in the whole process. Yeah. When it's a dad that gets married maybe a year or two after there's a split or divorce to somebody else, that woman feels so threatened that this is where our counseling starts. It's like, hey, what parts of you are feeling so insecure about this that this has to happen? And man, that both Amanda and Justine are at a place where they're like, hey, you know what, we want to do what's best for Hayden, and to see that relationship grow and flourish is so cool. And so, like you're talking about, so unique. This is obviously like a situation God's got his hand on, which is 100%, right? Yes. So you've you talked about, you've got all of these kind of scenarios that you're running in your head about what's going to happen. You mentioned, you're like, I don't know what to do whenever I see him, kind of that Will Ferrell, like, hey, I don't know what to do with my hands. Do I shake your hand? Do I hug him?
Fist bump? Do we hug? Yeah. I know I want to hug you. But
right. Yeah. Where is that line? What's that
he made it easy.
Like?
He walked up and goes.
And just arms wide open.
Yeah.
Yep.
Someone's singing that Creed song right now in my brain. It's arms wide open. I got
That's
you.
good to be kids in the 90s, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is so good.
But he was just like arms wide open. I was like, bro, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was good.
So then, as all of that's happening, how are you processing those things? Because, all right, so he comes to you, arms wide open, you guys hug. So now, you're kind of checking these boxes. All right, so it's not handshake, which is one level. It's not fist bump, which is another like sort of degree of separation. I got the hug. So as, some of those concerns and things are melting away, what is it like navigating, conversation and trying to pick up with this young man who you have had a tremendous affection for the last 16 years, but now you're starting a relationship off where you're getting to know him for the first time. What's that been like, and how have you navigated kind of what could be kind of awkward? I mean, kids at 16, even if they're great kids, there's some awkwardness in developing relationships with teenagers in general, for sure.
Right? No, it's been good. I've had to be more mindful of, just creating habits to make sure my communication with him is consistent and it's good and it's what he needs and it's not too much. I'm literally just, it's, you're trying to figure all these things out of just like, okay, hey, how much communication is the right amount? Because I don't want to be blowing them up all the time, but there's so many things I want to talk about, and just kind of going back and forth between that, and there'll be times like we'll be texting back and forth, and I don't hear anything for a while, and he's like, "Oh, sorry, man, I read this, and I got distracted, and I was talking to my buddies, and we were playing some video games." I'm like, "Man, it's okay." I'm like, "You don't have to apologize, just we're good." But yeah, it's a really cool thing, just kind of figuring out that balance. It's just, I think it'll take a little bit of time to find out the balance, but we're building a relationship, which is great.
Yeah, it seems to be one of those that it's all very natural, and that's been really cool to get to hear about y'all's interactions and how your relationship is being built. How much of your relationship thus far are you like looking at and saying like, okay, genetics are the craziest thing in the world?
It's pretty crazy. You know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Because you guys you favor a little bit, right?
And there's some things that he does that I do. Mm-hmm. And, it's, I look at the relationship that I have with Aiden, Cora, and Nola and how close I am with my kids.
Right.
How Aiden and I have not only just a father-son relationship, but we have a friendship.
Yeah.
You know, like he'll talk to me about things that maybe he shouldn't, but I'm like, you know what, bro? This is my boy.
Yeah.
Like, this is my bro. Like, let's go.
You've moved into that next phase of life. I think somebody described parenting as like there's three phases that for like the first 12 years, you're a cop. For, like years 13 to like 19, you're a coach. And then from year like 19 on, you're a consultant. And you're sort of moving into that consultant phase where like, hey, they're going to come to you with stuff that they definitely would not have talked to you about at 15 or 8.
Yeah. Or things that he's just showing me that he thinks are funny that I'm like, hey, something funny. And some I have to remind him like, hey, bro. And he's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
It's not as funny as you think it is.
Yeah. I'm like, you shouldn't be. It's because I'm 42. There's a difference there. And I'm also trying to protect his heart,
right.
And his mind. And then I look at, the relationship I have with my daughters, how close I am. My girls are my best friends.
Yeah.
Amanda is my best friend, but my girls are my best friends as well, and so is Aiden. And I look forward to Hayden feeling that way with me as well. And like genetics, like when people see my daughters doing stuff, they're like, that is definitely your daughter. Mm-hmm. And there's things that he does. It's like, oh, that is definitely my son. It's just crazy. It's just so cool. Now I was never like a big runner, but I could run when I was younger.
Right. You had to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And especially, doing those adventure races and stuff like that. And the sports I played in high school, there's times I would go for like a 10-mile run because that was part of the conditioning for kickboxing. Because I knew the advancement test coming up, and, I'd be driving home from kickboxing and just smoked and just trained, and I had an advancement test coming up. And I'd be like 2-3 miles from the house, and I'd have my dad drop me off. I'd be like, I'm going to run the rest of the way. And I didn't have regular shoes. I had my wrestling shoes boxing shoes that I would run.
Old school ASIC wrestling shoes. Yep. Yeah, that's what you're running.
That I would run 2-3 miles in.
Yeah.
And, condition myself, and I'd be running on the balls of my feet, And so, and it's also part of my calf development. It was just, I would run, just like that to minimize the impact and to replicate like just being on your feet and moving around. And anyways, I would do stuff like that. And Amanda and I were dropping off him and his buddies after the movies, and they were talking, and one of his buddies was talking. He's like, yeah, I come and run this hill because it sucks. And I'm like, yeah, man, I love these kids, man. And this kid, he trains Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and MMA. And which fires me up that kids in high school are training Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai and MMA and fighting. And I'm like, yes, like, let's go, man. And so this kid's talking about running this hill. He's like, yeah, I run this hill because it sucks. Then Hayden's like, we should go for a run together. And the kid's like, nah, bro, I don't want to die, because they know Hayden can run. He's a runner.
He's cross country. Yeah.
He's like, bro, we could just knock out an easy 8-mile run.
Dude. Doesn't exist. There's no such thing.
To him it does. And Amanda chuckles. She goes, an easy 8-mile run. And like looks over at me, and I'm like, oh, I would die right now.
For sure.
Like, please do not ask me to go for a run with you tomorrow morning.
No, we just did a half marathon a few months ago. Bro, I don't know that I could do a 5K right now and feel good about it. Sorry, Rob Jones.
Yeah. But it's been cool. The whole, and just the way he does things, and it's just, it just reminds me. I can't wait for him and the girls and Aiden to hang out and be around each other, and just see the similarities. And like Amanda was telling the girls, she's like, he's just a hybrid of all three of you guys,
which is got to be weird for them to hear.
Oh yeah, yeah. But what's crazy is like, Aiden is not my blood.
Right.
but he is my boy.
Right.
It's funny. People will be like, can't deny that one. And Aiden and I will just like smile at each other. It's like, yeah, but it's really cool. The whole thing, man, is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So much of intelligence and aptitude has to do with genetics. Interest and stuff really don't, but the intelligence and aptitude, they've scientifically proven that those things are linked. And
he was saying something, sorry to interrupt, but
no,
I
good.
just had to think about this. He was saying something at brunch on Monday.
It's such a posh word. Brunch.
Well, it was brunch.
I know, I love it.
It was later than breakfast, earlier than lunch.
Yeah.
What else would you call it, Lucas?
I would call it brunch. I just love the bouginess of that word coming out of your mouth. You're a brunch. What happened at brunch?
Oh. At times I just want to attack you.
You're welcome.
This is one of those moments that I'm like, why do I feel this energy inside of me? I'm just like, attack.
I just bring it out in you.
Yeah. So we're at brunch.
Your brunch, yeah.
Out in Southern California.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah, dog.
With Vivaldi playing in the background. You get the violin concertos.
I don't know if any of those things you just said mentioned. I'll look it up in a dictionary later. And, I said, hey, bro, sorry, you got that from me. It was like something that he was making a comment about, like a stutter, a speech impediment. And his mom just laughs. She goes, between your dad's speech impediment and my ADHD kid, I'm sorry. It was just like, but he's a good kid, man.
That's awesome. It is fun to get to see, those things that are kind of undeniable. A friend of mine from church, Heather Swan, who you know pretty well.
Oh yeah.
Heather is an NPE. I don't know if we've talked about this or not on air before. So there's two different ways two different things that could stand for as a non-parental event or not parent expected. So what happened with Heather is she grew up thinking that one guy was her dad. He didn't. She would just go see him a couple of weeks in the summer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Her mom raised her essentially as a single mom. But she would go see him periodically, and then from a 23andMe test, she finds out that this guy in Ohio that they never really knew, that her mom kind of dated for a little bit, is actually her dad. And so they've struggled because she's in her late 30s and has one kid in college, another one that's 16, 17.
Yeah.
And he is a guy who was never married, all of a sudden finds out he's a granddad, and is really excited at first, and then after about 8 months of pretty interesting conversation, they get to know each other. He came down here once, she went up there once, then there was nothing
from him,
yeah. But her aunts and uncles and cousins and stuff that are up there, they all keep in touch, right? So she's got this whole family. And one of the things that they were talking about is when she got up there, that she looks like and acts like a lot of her relatives who she has never met before.
How crazy is
and
that,
it's
man?
Yeah, it's just this weird thing when you look at the way that they have similar senses of humor, the same aptitudes, they favor the same kind of foods and all those kinds of things. It's wild to see how much genetics plays a role in all of those things. And then over time, right, when you got the ability to build those relationships, you're like, hey, you know what? This group of people lived in Ohio. She lived in Dallas, Texas. Mm-hmm. They've been separated for, essentially 40 something years. And then when they get the moment to reconnect, it's like they've been family the entire time because everything just kind of melts together and all this stuff is the same. So
it's so amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. So my last question on this, man, do you think you're going to get used to it? Do you think there's ever going to be that moment where it kind of feels like this is the way that it's always been?
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. And I don't think it's bad or good either way.
Yeah, I don't think that's a negative thing, right? There's very little that so Kirsten and I just celebrated 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly there was a huge chunk. I mean, I'm 39, right? A large chunk of my life I lived without her being a part of it at all. But when I think about, the things in my life, that even the stuff that happened in my 20s, the brain is such a weird thing, right? Mm-hmm. That I'll talk to her about it and she's like, no, I didn't know about that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? You had to have known about that. Like you're because she's such an important and integral part of my life now that I'm like, no, like you had to have been.
So it's gotten to that point where it's like that with my military career with Amanda.
Yeah.
She wasn't there until the very end. She never experienced a deployment or a workup or me really being gone much.
Right.
Because she was in Mississippi and I was out there a lot of the time, and my command let me go out there for the majority of my time on the talent. I mean, so, she never experienced any of those things. Now, there was one time when they were 8 weeks old that the teams were like, hey, we need you on this trip. And I was then gone, for a good amount of time, but she never had to deal with any of those things. But in my mind, there have been multiple times where I'm just like, yeah, win. And I'm like, oh, wait, nope. She wasn't a part of that.
Yeah.
She wasn't included in that. She doesn't know that. She doesn't remember that. She didn't experience that. And so I don't know. I don't know where or how it's going to go with this one with the brain. There's just things that I do the same thing with my kids now. I'm just like, I feel like, even though they're 13, there are times that I feel like in this moment, in this age that they're in, it was like that 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. With the conversation and experiences, and I'm like, oh wait, no, okay.
Yeah, there's just people that are so important and integral in your life that you have a hard time sometimes remembering what life was like without them being there. Even the old memories that you have, they kind of invade their imprint kind of gets put on it in some ways.
Well, it's the same thing. It's like you had people in your life that you thought would be in your life forever, and then now they're not, or they're not as much as an integral part of your life like they were.
Yeah.
There's people that, knew that we're going out there in February, and, we, a few different group texts and pictures and stuff like that. And then this last birthday weekend, and there's been people that I would have expected like some responses from, but got like zero.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, whatever. Like, that's your loss.
Yeah.
Like, that's your loss. You're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. Not going to let it affect me, but, I think it just reinforces what we're talking about. It's like, I mean, things are going to ebb and flow in life, and things are going to shift, and, whatever.
I said that was my last question, and I lied. One more popped into my head.
All good.
You've mentioned Hayden's grandparents a couple of times and what a phenomenal job they've done in helping to raise him.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of Justine's family who came out to his birthday party. What's the reception from the extended family been like, and what have, in your conversations with them, what have their reactions been to you guys being, reunited?
Oh, her parents were awesome with it. Like, they were super cool, very receiving, very nice. Her aunts were there. They're in town, and just gave Amanda and I big hugs, and her mom did, and her dad did as well, and and so her family was very sweet, kind, and receptive, and we had a great day.
Was that another dynamic that you kind of had some, maybe
I didn't know
tertiary concerns and stuff about, right?
I didn't know where they were at. I didn't know where their heart posture was, and we had talked about it the last time I was out there, and I went by her parents' house to talk to her parents as he's getting out of school, and it was a good conversation.
Yeah.
So.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a lot of a relationship dynamic at play there, and just the grace in which everybody has handled everything, yourself included. Certainly Amanda and Justine, but also the aunts, the grandparents. That the amount of putting aside of personal egos to get the opportunity to bring a young man and his dad back together has been it's so cool. And I got to say, this has been one of the coolest vicarious experiences of my life, getting to watch it happen and happen in real time. And I'm excited about, as things progress, kind of getting updates about all of this stuff and what we get to talk about in the future.
And it's been cool, because obviously, my parents, I told them, and, they're excited about it and everything. And, Amanda's parents were, equally excited, which is really cool. They watched the kids while we went out there, and we're asking for updates and pictures the whole time, and they're excited to meet Hayden, and, it's really cool. So it's a cool situation all around.
Pat and Mary.
Yeah.
How stoked are Pat and Mary about the opportunity to get to spend some time with their grandson again?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
I still have Mary's pot pie dish from like December of 2023 when she made me this delicious pot pie.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. I got to get that back to her. So, well, dude, while you get ready for some final thoughts, I want to talk to the NCCs and the troopers out there on how they can support the podcast. First, thank you guys so much for listening, for subscribing, for following, for your comments on Instagram whenever we've got Q&A stuff, for sharing all of the posts. Y'all are absolutely amazing. I think we've got the best listeners in the world and on the internet. If you are just getting in the game and you want to follow us, you can check out JP Dinnell at JP Dinnell on Instagram, Dinnell. You can look at me at Lucas Pinkard on Instagram as well. Make sure that you look in the show notes. Check out echelonfront.com and check out Echelon Front at Echelon Front on all of the social media sites. You can see stuff from Jocko. You'll get stuff from Leif Babb, and Dave Burke is coming out with a new book, and they've been posting about that a little bit on the social sites. You can also get in the game on some free online academy stuff. There's some free resources where you can take how you take extreme ownership into the workplace and integrating that kind of stuff. You can find out about some of the Echelon Front events. Muster 022 is coming up in San Antonio, Texas here pretty soon. And then is 023 at the end of this year, like further down the road, or is that 2026? I think there's there's Orlando.
Yeah, Orlando.
Yeah, get in on that. They've got the Battlefield, which is happening at Gettysburg, or you can get part of the Extreme Ownership Online Academy, which is a Monday meeting where you get we talk about one topic for the course of about an hour, and then some great Q&As, and the community there is absolutely incredible. So make sure that you contact them. They can work with your company and come out and send out consultants. You can do all that kind of stuff, dude. It's pretty rad. Jesus in Jiu-Jitsu is a ministry that the two of us are a part of. We've got all kinds of stuff that's going on with them. We do regular in-person Jiu-Jitsu seminars where somebody comes out, does a free seminar. It's a high-level Jiu-Jitsu practitioner. Stefan Banta, who we had on a couple of episodes ago, came out and did one for us. We got one coming up in Idaho. I think it will be either just happening or just have had happened whenever this episode comes out, as I use all my being verbs. Did you like the way I did that?
Tomorrow.
Okay, there you go. Make sure that you check that out. That is right around in the Boise area. Jocko Fuel has sent out a ton of stuff, so make sure you go check that out on Rafael Formiga. Our professor will be out there giving instruction. Go to littlecattle.co.
Yeah, dog, get that beef.
It is a Texas beef company that JP is a part of. They've got beef sticks, which if you have a gym or a nutrition shop, or you're just a good human being and need your beef sticks and want to make sure that other people get them as well, you can email Amanda at littlecattle.co to get in the game on some of the wholesale beef sticks. They also have beef tallow products, which we use on the daily for our kids. There's a lavender tallow that we've been using as allergy season's here, so we've been using as a chest rub for Levi.
Oh, dude,
yeah,
game changer.
The doctors were like, "Yep, give that a shot. It's helping him get a little bit of extra sleep and keeping those nasal passages clear." Check out On the Path Printing for your printing and apparel needs. That's at On the Path on Instagram. Shoot a message if you've got printing and stuff that you want to have happen. Bruiser Arms, which is my current favorite, because I am putting myself in a category where I'm promising myself that I will get a prototype from one of y'all's packages. Y'all have made no promises of that to me, but this is a lofty,
self-proclaimed
promise.
It's
I'm trying to manifest it. As long as I keep saying this on the episodes, maybe it'll happen. But it's a custom gear and training company to do firearms tactical training with some of the best instructors in the world. JP Dinnell, Jocko Willink, Leif Babin. Pretty cool. And then big thanks and shout out to Origin and Jocko Fuel, where you can get all American made supplements and clothes, which is pretty freaking awesome. You just did an Instagram post about creatine. I know I've been harping on it. It has been for Kirsten, for energy levels and for sleep, especially with, and I guess Scotty will be a year old when this episode comes out. He's still in that phase where he's got some teeth and he's starting to do solids, but he's still got that one time between 11:30 and 1 a.m. where he wants a little comfort nursing from mom. So he's waking all of us up in the house except for Levi.
Sweet.
And Kirsten has struggled getting back to sleep. Now that we're on the creatine, sleep's coming easier.
Dude,
cognitive
awesome.
function is through the roof.
She's
feeling better
during the day and at evening, or
she's just doing. Yep, she's just doing 5 grams in the morning, and they say it's you can either do for 7 days, you can do 20 grams for 7 days to kind of do a preload, or they say it takes about 2 weeks if you do 5 grams a day to get in your system, and that really is the sweet spot. Unless you need something heavy performance driven, then maybe you bump it up to 10 or 15 for a few days in order to, all right, I'm prepping for a weightlifting competition, or, I got some hard training or stuff coming up. Then that's it. That maintains it and it elevates your performance enough to where your body's going to use whatever it can and get rid of the rest. And it's been huge to see the difference in her. I was talking to a friend of ours who's a nutritionist. And he's like, you can start giving that to Levi. And it's not going to do anything, negative to him. And I'm like, bro, I have the most jacked toddlers on the planet. Pump them full of those.
Small dose. Small
full
dose.
of that. But that's not nutrition advice.
Yeah.
But that is something he was like,
but if you want your kids to
it's
win.
just such a, right, exactly. But just such a powerful supplement. And
just straight giving your son creatine and remember the liquid amino fuel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Just sprinkle that over the top.
That'll be good. You just eat it every morning with his bacon and eggs. It'll be awesome. His neck will be thicker than mine by the time he's 5. So yeah, check out the Jocko Fuel stuff. And then obviously what the guys at Origin are doing, bringing manufacturing back to the United States. It's absolutely incredible. Their last really 6 to 8 months, they've improved their efficiency so much. They've hit some of their long-term goals. They sold 100,000 pairs of jeans, I think, just in the last year. So cool. So make sure that you do that. Support what's going on here in the States and what Amanda and Pete Roberts have built, what Jocko's been doing. And thanks to all of them for supporting what we do here at the JP Dinnell podcast. You got any final thoughts for us, man?
Change is possible if you desire it. And you have to do a self-honest, you have to do an honest self-assessment to see where you're at, where you want to be, and then start making changes. Start making small iterative